at federal, state governments, and local levels. And fifth, in the blueprint also states that there will be equal opportunity for men and women. Although looking into at the attendance we have in this hall, one would think that FIP is mainly for the women. We do not mind. The benefits of FIP, the perceived benefits, include self-sufficiency in food production, the development of indigenous technology, promotion of vast employment opportunities, and entrepreneurial development. Other features of FIP is that there will be a board to be chaired by the First Lady, Dr. Mrs. Abacha. There will be a technical advisory committee, which is drawn from People's Bank, in the person of the MD of People's Bank, NBCI, NACB, National Association of Small-Scale Industrialists, and the like. There shall also be a state coordinating committee to be chaired by the state FSP chairperson. The emphasis will be on training. The loans available from FIP would attract an interest rate of 10%. I would like to harp on this particular aspect because other programs of government that were attractive to small or cottage enterprises that were used by the low-income earners ran into some problems because at one point in time, the government reneged on its promise. So if the government says it is 10%, throughout the duration of the loan, one would want a situation where 10% would be adhered to. One would not want a situation where, like in some of the packages, the beneficiaries were allowed to change their foreign exchange at 22 when they borrowed. Because of the depreciation in the Naira exchange rate, the government is going back and insisting that they should now pay back at 85. That is just beside the point. Loan disbursement would be over a period of 3 years, and there will be a moratorium of 3 months. There will be banks that will be used as participating banks, and the ceiling on the loan would be 555,000 per project. If we link it to Vision 2010, if one has a vision like of what we see Nigeria in the year 2010, and this is my own vision, it's not Vision 2010's vision because we have not yet completed the assignment. But if we perceive Nigeria in the year 2010 as a nation with improved standard of living, one of enterprising and disciplined people who have the resources, the technology, the ability, and the desire to produce quality goods and services aimed at promoting sustainable economic growth at a rapid pace that satisfies the nation's aspirations and which enables the country to be globally competitive and internationally respected.
The Industrial Development Finance Company. I have some comments to make on the paper presented by Chief Korolo. Firstly, on the reference scenarios on page 7 of the paper, the division of society into those 3 categories of the low income, middle income, and average, in which he argued that about 92% of the population contribute about 30% of the national income. Really, regarding the only last part of it that I quarrel with is on the 64% contributing 25%. Considering the effect of the structural adjustment program and its effects on the income distribution pattern of the country, I would think at this point in time that percentage will be a bit distorted. Pre-spend, yes, but I think post-spend that distribution pattern I think has become distorted. Then secondly, on the issue of that you raised on page 9, that's the maintenance of correct prices for agricultural output and input put. I think that to me is the core of the problem with our poor. Because in one of the papers that I presented at another forum, I did distinguish that the poor really should be categorized in, we have to make two distinctions between the urban poor and the rural poor if we are really going to tackle the problem of the poor. Essentially, in that paper, I did argue that the causes of poverty in the urban area are radically different from the causes of poverty in the rural areas. And I did say there that the essential cause of poverty in the rural area is this issue of not paying the correct prices for the produce of the rural poor. Because if we are to look at it, we'll find that the capacity to generate income among the rural poor is already in existence. Unlike in most places where, because of poverty, is the lack of ability to generate income. They already have the ability, they already have the capacity to generate income. But the reward of their efforts is really low. And as such, we have that vicious circle of poverty among the rural poor. Therefore, it gladdens my heart when the presenter did mention this issue of correct prices for agricultural output. And I think until such a time, and I really think the people involved with Peap will have to address this issue of how they can put in place some mechanism whereby the rural poor can be justly rewarded for their efforts. Because of poverty of the urban poor, and it's really the issue of capacity to generate income. There is a different kettle of fish, and since they have not touched on it in this paper, I don't think I'd like to go into it at this forum. Now, on the comments made by the chairman, which I'd like to comment guilty of
Unifem, Lagos. Chief Perona, thank you very much for a paper well presented that has touched on the mandates of many donor agencies, and in fact that has encapsulated the concerns of Platform for Action Beijing. But I would have liked, I don't know whether this is the forum, but I would have liked you to address, if not here, but in another paper, expectation of Peap from donor agencies, especially the multilateral and bilateral ones, to offer them, so see how we can work together and achieve some of your objectives. Offer us a menu. Then the second question is, this is more of a question, Chief Kololo, your data on page 7 regarding categorization of the poor. Would have liked to have the source of the data, how 8% of Nigerians control, I don't know what percentage of the wealth. I don't know whether you are aware, there has been a World Bank poverty assessment made for Nigeria, whether that was one of your sources. The other concern I had has been touched by the first speaker, which is distinction between the poor, whether urban and rural areas, because you have different mechanisms to address them, and then in case of Nigeria, both of them are sent to merge as the cities expand. If you could touch on that. Another point is the sectors. There's enough evidence, documentary and experimental and others, to show that when you have this kind of project and you really want to uplift women, when it starts, what could happen if care is not taken is really more feminization of poverty or more poverty of women, because the sectors they control, if you try to address it, men become interested and somehow take over the sectors from the women. It has happened. In Cameroon, for example, when area fishing, and the things happened here even in the 80s, if I remember, when women, mainly women were fisherwomen, they go out and fish. And when you started with the Hebrew brothers, like the trolleys, women were sort of marginalized out of the sector that was traditionally theirs, where they controlled. So I don't know whether FIAP will put some mechanism in place to address this and make sure this doesn't happen. My final observation, and again question, is the loan. Small loans administration is a heavy cost, and people run away from them. But again, in this case, the intention is very well stated and very commendable. But without technical assistance and then supervision of whatever project the loan was made for, is there anyone who can have some indicators or measurable, monitorable indicators of what will happen after the loan has been used, whether there was technical assistance and the sustainability and multiplier effect? These are the issues, Mr. Correll, I'm sorry to interview. If you could address them, because it will help FIAT to put in place some mechanism from the one of how they're going to manage this and how it's going to be sustainable. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Assumptions have been could be classified into three categories. We can talk about the first two assumptions. I classify them under political assumptions, and the others may be economic and social assumptions too. One of the speakers talked about training. That is concerning the skills to be given to the entrepreneurs when they get their loan and all whatnot. But my own concern as a politician is to draw your attention to the first two assumptions, which state as follows. 1, stable social-political conditions. 2, dependable expectation of orderly political change. I've noticed that within the membership of Vision 2010, probably there are no politicians amongst you. And number 2, is it possible to organize a training session, a workshop like this, or a seminar for the political class who are likely to take over the reign of affairs within the next 2 years? Because when we are talking about year 2010, well, that's about 13 years to come. Those who are going to implement these projections, I think we should consider giving them sort of training, because that's the way I look at it. And all other areas or issues I would have loved to raise have been raised by the former speakers. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Refer to one paragraph which maybe touches me personally or as a woman, on paragraph 10. And I wish to quickly say that it would be nice for us to if possible, expunge it, because when the men grab hold of certain ideas and they make the most of it, that's why it becomes very difficult for women to move forward, because we move forward so much and then they take us back so much. And then this Peap as a whole, we all know, is a family economic advancement program, so there's no issue of whether it's you're empowering a man more than a woman or a woman more than a man. But if he's afraid already that with Peap and the women coming into the forefront, the men will now be relegated to the background, and there will be more violence in the home, and there will be exchange of roles of the man being the head of the family. I think already women have gone through so much labor and so much pain that there are certain areas or certain societies where the woman is the provider, the resource person. She looks after the children, she cuts wood for the family, she does everything, and she still kneels down to give praise and thanks to her husband as the head of the family. So I think it is very important that we look at it from that way and know that we women, no matter how much we are empowered, the men still are there and to be taken like that. And there are so many instances where men have been empowered, or some of these loans have been given to the men because of deference to their wives. Okay, let's give it to the man. He empowers himself through his wife in a way, and he goes forth to take second, third, fourth, fifth wives, and this wife in the house suffers with all her children and she still has to make do, send her children to school. So left to me, if Peap is going to help even more women to attain more economic independence, but at the same time have a vision for a stable family, let it be so. So let the men not be worried. So really until if this kind of idea goes to the vision committee and they buy it as men, it becomes a bit dangerous. So Mrs. Phillips, we look onto you for salvation there. So that's the point, one point I wanted to make. And then I wanted to find out from Mr. Korolo that does he want the society to stay in a sort of a plateau or level, what should I say, and even kill for all of these preconditions to be available before we move on, or are you actually seeing Peap as the right tool for achieving the socio-economic aspects of Vision 2010? Thank you.
A lot of the urban poor haven't got the funds to buy sewing machines. A unit of the sewing machine now is about 178,000. You know, the little one without all the basic spare parts is about 178,000. So the main one is about 200 and something. See, where do you want these people to have? Should in case I'm giving a loan of 55,000, you know, how do you want us to survive? Not to talk of the materials. Okay, now we said the people in the poor fishing. After fishing, you know, we want to smoke it. And now we are talking of our neighboring countries because we've attended a lot of conferences with our neighboring countries where they are really asking us that, oh, we like you Nigerians with your national outfit and what have you. You know, why don't you send some to us over there? You know, the weaving kiln now is pretty expensive. Not to talk of the equipment to smoke this fish, to package it, because you told us that, I mean, I'm talking of the crown agents. You know, the other time they said most of the goods here are not well packaged. By that, all these things cost a lot of money. So my own topic is about urban poor, which I very much like members of the Peap and year 2010 to please look into the urban poor instead of poor. Thank you.
Who commented? The issue of the distinction between the rural poor and the urban poor, at least as far as I'm concerned, is a matter of, it's locational. It's locational. It's where you find them. They are still poor. They are still poor. And you have identified what they normally do. These are the artisans and what they do. These are the machines. They have to use the cost of it and so on and so forth. I think as a matter of detail, when the program comes off ground, the program will be able, and as I mentioned in this paper too, I did mention the class of people who will benefit in the urban area. And I believe that when the program comes for implementation, that distinction will be made. It could even be made in terms of the size of the loan that will go to this individual. But I want to strike this note of caution. It depends on what you call the rural areas. In the rural area, there are people who are there who have to buy this auto engine. They are in the rural area. This power engine to power, they are to go and fish. And the drying machine you talk about here, I don't know how we draw the line when you come to the nitty-gritty of them, but the point is well noted. If I have the chance of writing the paper again, I will do something about that. The other question asking whether we should wait for all the conditions I have listed before VIV can take up. I did not intend that. I am only trying to sensitize you to the possibility of success of this particular program, which may elude us if we do not take as much as possible of this precondition into consideration and we just launch into it. I'm not saying we should not start, but starting without this kind of precondition is the beginning of a program experiencing difficulty in terms of implementation. And if you look at the first page of the paper, down to the second page, I gave a note of warning. The other speaker spoke about women and men, where I spoke about women and men as actors and beneficiaries, and that is enough. Men had had enough, and we should be very careful about this, that this should not go to... I think we should be very careful. I'm a person who is highly sensitized. I'm not a woman, but I'm very concerned, and I have been involved in a lot of women programs. And I try to think like this. If we try to exclude men, and you need to know the population of poor families, when you empower the woman in a poor home, a poor household, the dynamics, the household dynamics changes. Eventually, this woman comes under problem. She cannot face the business again. She can't do well. She can't manage, and so on and so forth. Why don't we take care of this problem from the beginning? Let the men be involved somehow. They may not like to be part of it, but let them be. I think, and I know they would like to be part of it. Then the other aspect of it, I mentioned in that paper, besides doing this, you are going to emphasize for women-only organizations, such that the supra-household culture is not imposed on their organization. So for women only, it's a question of the proportion between the two. I have so much of the question as I don't have much time. They say they want more feminization of the program. That's a question of choice for the implementers of the program. And I agree with it to some extent, because women income is certainly needed by every household, be it poor, low income, middle income, or even the rich. So I don't have any objection to that. My data, and that's very important, I will talk about that and leave the rest for my chairman to help me handle. The data I have in that place, I am not aware of the study that was carried out in Nigeria. In fact, I was going to make a comment which I had made privately to the DG, that we have a dearth of research in this country on the family. And what some of us have tried to do is what we can, thinking about this problem on our own, what we can put together. So the issue of the data is not really from the study which you know about, that I don't know about. And I would like to benefit from your experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief Orolo. Please put your hands together for him. Before we round up, I would like to, in advance, thank my co-chairman of sessions, Mrs. Oprah Benson, and Chief Mrs. Oprah Benson, and Dr. Mrs. Aribi Sala, and distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It's been nice having this discussion during this session. Thank you very much.
So we are going to make sure that the time lost by the first session, we're able to gain it back. We are now in the age of high technology, and we do not believe that much time should be spent on reinventing the wheel. So I believe that the next presenter is going to go straight to the point. So I'm going to be very strict about time. But before I do that, I just want to call your attention to a one-page document that has been given to me by Chief Orolo. It's on Field Vision 2001 workshop. Please, this will be circulated now. And while we do not intend this to distract you from other sessions, we would like you to read this, and maybe immediately after this session, you complete them for collection. I understand it's already been circulated, so please make sure you submit this. You are not to go away with the paper. It's a questionnaire is meant to be submitted. Well, I want to welcome you to the second session, and I know the resource person Dr. Charles Akindiji Akinola, a country director for TechnoServe Nigeria, has already warmed up himself, and like they will say in the aircraft, I will request you to put on your seat belt, because it's going to be a very fast one, and you may not be able to catch up if you are not very, very attentive. Also, I will request him to simplify the technicality of the technology in the paper. Why? Because most of us are lame people, and we do not want to be bored. We want to understand what he's saying. I want you to note that technology is the tool for empowerment, for economic development. Without technology, you cannot do anything. So in layman, before I give him the time, I want you to see this next session as giving you that important thing, without which you can do nothing. If you have money, you have political status. Without technology, Peap is concentrating on production. You cannot produce anything without technology. So I want you to pay attention to this, and one critical factor you consider in it is whether the 555,000 naira can give you the appropriate technology you need for any meaningful production. Also, I will appeal that you bear with me with my voice. I have gone through a lot in the past 1 week, and I will ensure that I'm still able to communicate clearly without cracking your voices. So with that note, I want to hand over to Dr. Akinola. You are starting at 25 minutes after 2 o'clock, and I'm going to stop you exactly 20 minutes, which will be 2:45 to 15 minutes to 3 o'clock. Thank you, Dr. Akinola.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Our protocols observed. I'll just go straight into the paper. I've been instructed to do it in as short a time as possible, so I'll do it in 5 minutes. Well, the paper you have before you really is basically for reference. This paper can be presented in as many forms as possible. I want to go straight into this paper. We'll go to page 5, because I imagine that the preamble in this paper could be digested at your free time. The question I asked in page 5 is that why Peap? One question that is often asked vis-a-vis this extra ministerial initiative of this nature is that why are we having Peap? What is Peap doing that the other ministries are not doing? And I've also tried to answer this. I said that it will be recalled that the question was raised with regard to the Better Life program of the former military administration. It has been raised also with respect to the subsisting family support program, and definitely it is going to be raised in respect of Peap. The development scholar have talked about this whole idea of having packaging responses to problems of poverty within organizations that are outside of the ministry. I talked about a Beveridge report. They've had a similar problem in the UK when they had something close to our Peap, and they were trying to address 5 wants. The Beveridge report was now saying that we do agree that there are the ministries, the departments are there, but we want to situate the resolution of these fundamental problems of poverty in one organization which will have clear access to the powers that be. I went on to talk about the last paragraph, that for initiatives that are necessarily multidisciplinary, like Peap, it tries to look at technologies, tries to look at credit, tries to look at so many other things, to put them in extra bureaucratic setups like we have, combine the ease of access to sources of authority with the capability for rapid response to red tape. I have cited the case of the Petroleum Trust Fund, which is also an extra ministerial outfit, which I think Nigerians believe is doing a good job. The critical test for Peap as I said, it's not really going to be by what we have in the blueprint, but really they should be able to constantly revalidate their existence and avoid really building up bureaucracies to replace already existing ones. Now, Peap Vision 2010 and the informal sector. In this sector, well, I listened to Dr. Phillips talking about one of the groups looking at the critical success factor on economic development. What I am saying with regards to Peap Vision 2010 and the informal sector is that in Nigeria, the informal sector, as people think, is just the organized private sector. Just last week, in Shelecom, I think this was in the paper, on the 26th of April, the Guardian, was having a meeting with the organized private sector, and he talked about the fact that Vision 2010 will be accommodating the programs that target the rural poor through some UNDP programs. What I'm saying here is that I think it is still tokenistic. That is, organized private sector is not definitely equated as all the private sector. The informal private sector is actually made up of small urban, capital-intensive. I mean, we're talking about the economy of this sector. It is not necessarily those big companies like Lever Brothers and WAPCO and Guinness and all of that. The informal sector that we are talking about is represented by people who are in this room, and I do not think that the Vision 2010, I think the Vision 2010, let me recount it this way, can do a better job in really accommodating the specific needs and concerns of this particular neglected part of the private sector. Now go into section 2, and I will read through this paper. Section 2 of this paper on page 8 specifically addresses what I have been asked to do. I've been asked to talk about strategies for achieving the Peap mission. I made a little adjustment to that title not because I don't want to be a Peap apologist. I did say as a potential springboard for economic empowerment and technological advancement. This is because I do believe Peap has the potential. I cannot say Peap must succeed, because this is all premised on some of the issues that will be raised in this latter sections 2 and 3. In examining the strategies for achieving Peap mission, it is necessary to highlight a number of issues that are critical to the successful implementation of the program if it is to be truly a springboard for economic empowerment and technological advancement. Reading through the Peap blueprint as prepared and published by the Office of the First Lady, a number of strategic directions come into focus. In particular, the blueprint talks about mobilization relevant to local international institutions, provision of capital, skills, and organizations to target groups, identification and coordination of relevant institutions to derive tailor-made packages, use of pre-existing institutions, maintenance of a minimalist approach or outfit, in which case they will not be having an elaborate secretariat and elaborate structure. And they also talk about the use of a pilot project approach. The issues that are to be highlighted in our subsequent discussion elaborate on these elements of the strategic direction as expressed in the blueprint of Peap. In that, the blueprint actually provides a broad framework for us, and I believe that the thinking process as regards the detailed implementation strategies of Peap should be a continuing one. And I think that is the assumption for, in fact, bringing us here. That is, the thinking hasn't stopped with regards to Peap. It should be a continuing one, informed by the experiences that we're learning, lessons learned on the field. In order for Peap to achieve its mission and meet its broad and specific objectives, therefore, the issues raised and discussed in this session are offered for consideration and action by Peap leadership. I have categorized these issues under grassroots mobilization and participation, the building of institutional partnerships, sustaining Peap through capacity building of local grassroots groups and institutions, ensuring programmatic and financial accountability in Peap, and also the replication of successful pilot Peap projects. The Peap blueprint clearly recognizes that real development starts with and is sustained by the support and participation of the people. As a program that emphasizes participatory development, it is most critical that the implementation process should reflect the target client, taking on the most active roles in identifying their own specific problems and needs, mobilizing resources, and beyond that, they should assume responsibility in planning and management. However, having said all of this about participation, development experience on the field has shown that the practice of participation is more complex than the theory. We all talk about participation. For the purposes of Peap, we can articulate the process of people participation along the following lines. 1. Stakeholding. A very crucial step in the implementation of Peap at the local level is the reflection of adequate stakeholding or commitment on the part of the beneficiaries of the program. Peap beneficiaries should be made to commit themselves upfront in cash or in kind to identified projects. I saw the blueprint talks about 10%. That's a matter for debate. I have seen on the field situations where people raise equity that is greater than 10%. Under Peap, stakeholding could also be in the form of requiring target groups to contribute a proportion of the value of fixed assets or working capital to complement the loans that will come to them under the scheme. However, there is a need for flexibility as to what could count as contributions so as to accommodate the variety of options and project-specific scenarios that might arise in the field. There are situations where labor is also counted as stake, as commitment. You monetize labor and you attach some cost to it. But in any case, the whole essence here is that the people must feel that the program belongs to them. It's not a program, the Peap is not really an abstraction. It should be bought over by the people. I see the participation in Peap as a learning and empowering process. Poverty alleviation projects that have failed in the past have been victims of lack of beneficiary input into the planning and implementation process. In situations where the project beneficiaries are not involved in the manner described above, they do not buy into the project and consequently they do not care about the project outcomes. The detailed strategies of involving the target beneficiary groups, for instance, in project identification, like what the RMDT wants to do, I think should involve the people living at the grassroots. I don't see a problem there because the people know the fabricators know them. I think what is important here is that we come up with profiles that is acceptable to RMDC and the other organs of the committee, as well as the people who this is meant for. I do talk about on page 11 non-governmental participation in Peap. A cross-sectoral program such as Peap cannot do without institutional relationships at both the planning and implementation stages. Successful Peap implementation will benefit tremendously from the introduction of a larger element of non-governmental participation in the controlling organs from the ward to the national level. I don't think that is the case, but I do see in the blueprint that is accommodation for co-opting people into these various levels. There are very credible, or there are several credible non-state actors, that is non-governmental organizations and community-based organizations that have already have productive experiences working at the grassroots, as well as having broad grassroots reach. These non-state actors can be positive forces in galvanizing for Peap popular support and participation in the rural grassroots areas. While some of these NGOs are well established with ongoing development programs, others may not be registered cooperatives as the blueprint talks about, but they could be membership associations with diverse social or cultural significance. Against this background, Peap's objective of encouraging artisans, agricultural producers and marketers is indeed a very laudable one. while acknowledging the significant role of NGOs in successful implementation of Peap. It is equally instructive to ensure that NGOs and CBOs with track records are the ones that are involved. This is because there are great tendencies for the emergence of several manners of impostor outfits in the name of cooperatives, NGOs, and CBOs seeking to participate in Peap. We saw the experiences with Better Life. As the collaborating organizations are identified, concerted efforts should be made to establish and build institutional relationships between these groups. They should be able to network among themselves. They should be able to build relationships with technical assistance organizations, resource institutions, local banks, research institutions, government agencies as well. I'm saying, for instance, a particular group in Ikorodu, for instance, that's into processing should be able to talk to the local bank, should be able to talk to the Polytechnic in Ikorodu. So what Peap is doing is just acting as a facilitator, just jump-starting a vehicle that should take a life of its own when it starts moving. On page 12, I talk about sustaining Peap through capacity building of grassroots groups and local institutions. Happy people have talked about the role of technical assistance here earlier on today. Previous development programs of Peap semblance in the past have shown a bias for physical and monetary inputs, based probably on the erroneous belief that money and materials alone will provide the solutions to rural and urban poverty. Experience has shown, however, that a people-targeted program such as Peap would succeed only if, in addition to financial and in-kind inputs, there is a careful, planned, and conscious provision of capacity building assistance, which involves the development of the knowledge and skill base of the beneficiary groups so that they will be able to manage their own projects. For Peap, technical assistance to build the capacity of groups will focus on hands-on training on areas like simple record keeping, not elaborate, accounting, operating and maintaining processing technologies, the equipment, the sewing machines, and all of that. They should have the capacity to take care of, to maintain all of this. Marketing, monitoring, and evaluation, among others. It is worth noting that the call for the inclusion of technical assistance does not in any way suggest that Peap should engage its resources in reinventing the wheel. Rather, available resources and proven expertise should be used in this regard. What I'm saying is that the organizations do exist on the ground. The latter part of page 12, I did talk about, just took the liberty to talk about TechnoServe, the organization that I work with, and talked about our own experience in rural enterprise development, working in partnership with local organizations. There's a tremendous potential in really replicating models that have worked when you're using these local organizations. With an organization in Ibadan where we have, in partnership, set up 5 projects that we have used as like laboratories to train the staff of these organizations. They have gone ahead to replicate this in 126 different places where my organization would not have had the capacity to reach. So what I'm saying is, teach, work through the local organizations, the grassroots organizations that are represented here, pass the skills on to them, and they will be able to do the job. Page 13, I talk about program and financial accountability. I want to talk about 2 areas of accountability here. One is program. I also talked about setting clear and streamlined focus for Peap. This has to do with the leadership, the committees involved in implementing Peap's objectives. I said there should be clear and streamlined focus so that no areas of ambiguity is allowed to exist in the framework of the program. And then they should be able to develop core indicators to measure their own performance, to see whether they're actually working towards the objectives. I talked about, on page 14, when a development program enshrines grassroots participation, principles of stakeholding, coupled with a clear and streamlined unified focus, nothing short of a transparent and accountable leadership will be acceptable to the general membership. The resources invested in Peap will be jealously guided and defended if the program participants have a strong sense of ownership. While the popular participation in determining Peap leadership in the various locations and communities will also give an added impetus to the entrenchment of grassroots economic democracy in Nigeria, Mrs. Fatai Williams was saying that she thought FIP should also help this whole process of making sure those assumptions Chief talked about actually are in place. I think FIP can also promote economic democracy in this regard. Now the last part is pretty straightforward, making FIP a cost-effective program. Here what we're saying is that we should make sure at the end of the day that the cost involved in implementing FIP does not really stretch out beyond the stream of benefit that is coming to people. Model. The blueprint of FIP has indicated that the approach of establishing projects shall, if necessary, begin with pilot projects covering selected local governments. I do buy into this. I think it is critical for FIP to first of all use a criteria for identifying selected local governments and selected ward areas where we can have a very first set of FIP projects. The pilot projects that are so established will provide opportunity for feeding back lessons learned from practical experience to those who have the responsibility for redesigning and implementing the next phases of FIP. And at the next phase of FIP, we will now go into mass replication and rational dispersal of these projects. So I don't think it makes sense to just move and start working in all the areas at the same time. It's going to spread the resources too thinly. Issues of quality control, the quality of the projects will be compromised. I have highlighted some challenges which I think can stand in the way of successful implementation of FIP. The first one is over-bureaucratization. Being essentially a government-driven initiative, steps should be taken at this initial stage to design for FIP a simple and responsive bureaucracy. This is necessary to make the participatory process more appealing to grassroots-based groups, which may otherwise be easily discouraged if the program becomes overly bureaucratic and insensitive to the felt needs at the local level. Duplication of efforts. There is a need to acknowledge that many of the issues to be addressed by FIP are already being handled in one form or another by agencies in both the formal and informal sectors. Rather than dissipate energy and goodwill on needless battles for territorial control with such agencies in their respective areas of proven operational competence, FIP, I think, should carve a niche for itself as a prime mover in harnessing the energies of the various institutions and making things happen in a coordinated manner. I do talk about the clarification of linkages with FSP. These are questions that people have asked. What is the relationship with the FIP with FSP? It's an offshoot of FSP, but I'm also aware of the FSP Trust Fund is also supposed to be funding initiatives at the grassroots. I think these are some of the gray areas that needs to be clarified in proper successful implementation. On the programmatic challenges in FIP, I think that we need to have a look at the credit system. In the design and the administration of its credit program, FIP must resist the temptation to operate a subsidy system. The cake sharing syndrome in the expenditure-driven public programs must be curbed. The interest rate, payment terms, loan management, and performance monitoring must be programmed in such a manner that they are not too lax and thus become a disincentive to entrepreneurship. Specifically, I paper here with FIP. I think market-based interest rates should be charged, or near market rates should be charged, in the realization that for users of credit in the informal sector of Nigeria, that I think I do have a sizable degree of knowledge, the issue is not so much that of the interest rate, it is more of the access to and the availability of